The twin suns of New Eden cast golden light across the wheat fields, painting the colony world in hues of amber and fire. Governor Elias Carter stood on the balcony of the administration dome, watching harvest drones move through the crops like mechanical reapers. The colony had thrived here for 3 generations, Earth's farthest successful terraforming project. His comm beeped. "Governor," came the voice of Lieutenant Chen, tight with tension. "We've got unidentified contacts at the edge of the system. 8 signatures. They just dropped out of FTL." Elias frowned. "Federation traders? Negative profiles don't match anything in the database." A chill ran down his spine. "Sound the alert. Get the civilians to the bunkers." The first alarm hadn't even finished echoing when the sky darkened. Not with clouds, with ships. Massive, jagged vessels descended like falling knives, their hulls shimmering with an eerie bioluminescent glow. The Vorak Elias had only ever seen them in classified briefings. Galactic boogeymen, harvesters of worlds. They didn't conquer. They consumed. "Governor." Chen's voice crackled over the comm again, this time edged with panic. They're ignoring hails. Scanners show a burst of static. Then screaming, Elias sprinted inside, slamming his palm on the emergency broadcast. "All citizens, this is not a drill. Evacuate to..." The dome shook. A thunderous impact sent him sprawling. Through the fractured glass ceiling, he saw the first Vorak drop, pods slam into the fields, their organic metal husks splitting open like grotesque flowers. Drones poured out skeletal, multi-limbed things, their bodies a fusion of chitin and polished steel. They moved fast, too fast. Elias grabbed a rifle from the security locker, his hands steady despite the adrenaline. Had been a Marine before politics. Some instincts never faded. Outside, chaos. Colonists ran in every direction, some dragging children, others frozen in horror. The drones didn't shoot. They grabbed. A woman screamed as a drone clamped onto her arm, its proboscis sinking into her flesh. Within seconds, her body convulsed, then went limp, drained. The drone's abdomen pulsed, swelling with stolen biomass. "Fall back," Elias barked, firing at the nearest machine. The round punched through its thorax, spraying black ichor. It staggered, then kept coming. Lieutenant Chen appeared beside him, her face smeared with soot. "They hit the power grid. Comms are down. We can't." A shadow fell over them. Elias looked up. The Vorak harvest ship loomed above the colony, its underbelly splitting open. Tendrils thicker than skyscrapers unfurled, slamming into the ground. Buildings crumbled like sandcastles as the tendrils began to digest them, breaking down matter into raw slurry. "They're not raiding," Elias whispered, horror dawning. "They're farming us." Chen grabbed his arm. "The bunkers won't hold. We need to get to the shuttle." Elias shook his head. "You go, I'll buy time." He sprinted toward the comms tower, dodging falling debris. The terminal was still intact. Barely. His fingers flew over the console, overriding the damaged systems. If he could just get one message out, the tower shook. A Vorak drone smashed through the wall, its faceless head swiveling toward him. Elias didn't stop typing. The drone lunged. He hit send just as the thing's claws ripped into his shoulder. Pain exploded, but his voice didn't waver as the recorder captured his final words. "To Earth Command, they're not just raiding. They're farming us. Tell the fleet, tell them it's time." The transmission crackled into the void as the tower collapsed around him. The marble halls of the Galactic Senate shimmered under the light of 3 suns, their polished surfaces reflecting the shifting colors of alien delegates. Ambassador Daniel Reeves adjusted his collar as he stepped onto the speaking platform, the weight of 17 burning colonies pressing against his ribs. The air smelled of ozone and something faintly floral, Zephyrian pheromones, if he remembered correctly. A bad sign. They only emitted those when amused. Holograms flickered above the central dais, displaying Vorak harvest, ships descending on New Eden. The footage showed biomechanical drones tearing through colony domes, their crystalline claws harvesting screaming humans like ripe grain. A murmur passed through the chamber, not of horror, but something closer to boredom. Ambassador Reeves, trilled High Senator Vexis, her avian crest flaring with each syllable. The Zeperian's telepathic presence brushed against his mind like cold fingers. Your petition for Federation intervention is quaint, but the Vorak operate beyond our borders. Their actions, while regrettable, are not our concern. Reeves clenched his fists behind his back. He'd practiced this speech 100 times in his quarters. None of the words came now. Only the image of Governor Carter's last transmission played behind his eyes. The man's face lit by fire as Vorak drones smashed through his office window. Not your concern, Reeves heard his voice crack. They're farming us, not just stealing resources. They're harvesting human biomass, processing it. He tapped his wrist pad, and new footage appeared. Vorak hive, ships pulsing with organic slurry, human DNA spliced into their grotesque bioreactors. This is genocide on an industrial scale. A gurgling laugh echoed from the Kreth delegation. Warlord Grathak leaned forward, his amphibious skin glistening with mucus. And what would you have us do, soft skin? The Vorak have harvested 12 species before yours. None were foolish enough to demand our protection. The chamber's acoustics carried every whispered insult. Reeves caught the word terrestrial from a methane breather, fragile from a silicon-based delegate. His translator even picked up a Zeperian thought projection, like watching a larval creature beg not to be eaten. Senator Vexis preened her feathers. Your colonies were unregistered settlements in disputed space. By Federation law. By Federation law, Reeves interrupted. Sentient beings have a right to exist. His voice bounced off in different marble. The hologram now showed a Vorak dissection chamber, human bodies suspended in nutrient gel. A few delegates looked away, not out of disgust, but apparent annoyance at the graphic display. Warlord Grathak drummed his webbed fingers. Let me explain galactic reality. Human, the strong consume, the weak are consumed. Your species spread too far, too fast, with no means to defend yourselves. He spread his arms, gesturing to the assembled delegates. We've all fought the Vorak at some point. We learned our place. Now you must learn yours. A crystalline chime signaled the end of debate. Vexis raised a taloned hand. The motion to intervene in human-Vorak relations fails. All in favor? 3 species raised appendages. Opposed. The remaining 14 delegates signaled rejection, some with obvious relish. Reeves stood frozen as the holograms winked out. The footage of burning children vanished like a bad dream. His wristpad buzzed, an incoming message from Earth. One word, stand down. Then Grathak leaned close, his breath reeking of brine and rotting meat. Don't look so defeated. Soft skin. The Vorak will leave enough of your kind to breed. They always do. His gill flaps vibrated with laughter. Think of it as population control. Reeves turned without a word. As he walked past the Zeperian delegation, he caught the edge of another telepathic projection. This one meant for him alone. Run home, little human, dig a hole, hide. The mental voice dripped with amusement. Maybe the Vorak will overlook you. The Senate doors hissed shut behind him. Somewhere in the corridor, a Kreth aide was giggling about terrestrial tantrums. Reeves tapped his wristpad again, this time opening an encrypted channel. The message he sent wasn't to Earth Command. It went to a private frequency, one that bypassed all Federation monitoring. 4 words, they won't help us. The reply came instantly, as if someone had been waiting. Admiral Hayes's voice, tight with controlled fury. Then we help ourselves. The Martian dust storms had buried half the shipyards. For 2 centuries, the skeletal remains of humanity's war machines sat under red dunes, their hulls pitted by time but their cores still intact. Admiral Lisa Hayes stepped onto the observation deck of the USN Vanguard, her boots clicking against the steel grating. The panoramic window showed a graveyard of titans, cruisers, dreadnoughts, carriers, all draped in tarps like corpses under shrouds. Status report, she said, her voice flat. Commander Ruiz didn't look up from his holopad. 17 colonies confirmed lost. The Vorak aren't just hitting outposts, they're processing them. Whole cities fed into their biomass converters. A flick of his wrist sent the data to the main display. The hologram showed New Eden's last transmission, a Vorak harvester, ship looming over the capital, its tendrils drilling into skyscrapers, pulling them apart like a child plucking petals from a flower. Hayes' jaw tightened. And the Federation, Ruiz snorted. Laughed us out of the chamber. Ambassador Reeves said the Kreth warlord called us soft-boned prey. The Admiral walked to the window, pressing her palm against the cold glass. Below, a team of engineers in hazard suits peeled back a tarp from the USN Titan's Wrath. The dreadnought's railgun array gleamed under the weak Martian sun, still pristine despite centuries of neglect. "Tell me about Nightfall," she said. Ruiz hesitated. "Mom, that protocol hasn't been activated since." "I know when it was last activated," Hayes snapped. "The last time someone thought we were weak." A silence settled over the deck. The crew exchanged glances. Nightfall wasn't just a contingency, it was a promise carved into the bones of every species that had ever underestimated humanity. Hayes turned to the comms officer. "Open a channel to Lunar Command. Authorization code Hades 79er." The officer's fingers flew over the console. Channel open. Hayes didn't blink. "This is Admiral Lisa Hayes, Sole Defense Command. Execute case Nightfall." "I repeat, execute case Nightfall." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the alarms began deep beneath the Martian surface. Reactors that hadn't hummed in 200 years flared to life. On Luna, automated foundries spat fire as they forged shells and warheads at a pace that would have vaporized any other species' factories. And in the dark between the stars, dormant defense platforms powered up, their targeting systems locking onto Vorak transponder signals light. Years away, Ruiz swallowed hard. "Admiral, the energy readings from the shipyards." Hayes didn't smile. "You think we disarmed because we were weak?" She tapped the star map, where 17 red dots marked the fallen colonies. "No, we disarmed because we won every war, because we broke every enemy, and because the galaxy forgot what happens when you wake the giants." The Vanguard's bridge lights flickered as the first of the mothballed ships roared back to life. Somewhere in the dark, a Vorak hive. Fleet moved toward its next meal. They had no idea what was coming. The alarms blared through the lunar shipyards like the screams of waking gods. Captain Ryan Blake stumbled out of his cryo pod, his lungs burning as they remembered how to breathe. The sterile white light of the revival chamber stabbed at his eyes. Eyes that hadn't seen daylight in 2 centuries. "Status," he croaked, his voice raw from disuse. A medical drone floated over, scanning him with a blue beam. "Cryo, revival successful. Captain, welcome to the year Faye." Blake's hands trembled as he gripped the edge of the pod. 200 years. The last thing he remembered was the armistice, the decommissioning orders, the slow march of humanity into peaceful obscurity. Now, the shipyard shook around him as ancient machinery roared back to life. Outside the chamber, the lunar factories were already vomiting fire. Automated forges that had sat dormant for generations now glowed white-hot, molten alloy pouring into the skeletal frames of warships. The USN Defiance, his old ship, hung in the zero. G-dock like a slumbering beast, its railgun batteries still wrapped in protective sheaths. A young lieutenant, no, ancient by Blake's standards, saluted as he entered the command deck. "Sir, Admiral Hayes' orders were to mobilize the Third Fleet within Faye hours." Blake stared at the tactical holo. 17 colonies, gone harvested like wheat. The Vorak. The lieutenant nodded. "They hit New Eden first, Governor Carter's last transmission. I heard it." Blake's fingers traced the ship's activation codes, the ones Head memorized as a fresh-faced ensign. The Defiance shuddered as its reactors flared to life. "Who else is awake?" Admiral Hayes revived the old guard first. Captain Joe from the Titan's Fist is already prepping his crew. Commander Alvarez too. Blake's lips curled. The wolves were coming out of retirement. Down in the armories, soldiers blinked awake, their muscles twitching as nanites repaired 2 centuries of atrophy. A grizzled sergeant, his face still creased from cryo. Gel grabbed a pulse rifle and grinned. Hell's bells, they actually woke us up. A fresh-faced recruit, barely out of training before the freeze, stared at the weapon racks. I thought we disarmed after the Krell Wars. The sergeant laughed, slapping the kid on the back. Disarmed, son, we hid the guns. You think humanity stays on top by playing nice? Above them, the shipyard's comms crackled to life. Admiral Hayes' voice, steel wrapped in velvet, echoed through every deck. All personnel, this is sole command, the Vorak Hive. Fleet has violated the Sirius Accord. 17 human worlds have been harvested. The Federation has abandoned us. A pause, the kind that made even the veterans straighten. So we remind them why they feared us. Blake stepped onto the Defiance's bridge. The crew, some old, some new, all lethal, snapped to attention. The main screen flickered, showing the Sol system's defensive grid. Hundreds of ships, their hulls still streaked with dust, powered up in unison. Captain, his tactical officer whispered, the Atlantica just left dry dock. The Vanguard is arming its singularity cannons. Blake leaned forward, his reflection staring back from the view screen. Helm, set course for the Proxima jump point. Tactical, unlock the Black Star protocols. The bridge crew froze. Even the veterans paled. Sir, those are planet killers. Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. The Vorak started a harvest. Well, finish it. Somewhere in the dark, the hive, Fleet stirred, sensing the change in the void. They just didn't know they wakened something worse than prey. They'd awakened wolves. The void between stars had never felt so alive. Captain Ryan Blake watched the tactical display as the USN Defiance cut through the black. Around him, the fleet moved in perfect silence. No chatter, no wasted energy. Just the hum of reactors and the quiet breathing of crew who hadn't seen war in 2 centuries. The Vorak Hive, ship Endless Hunger, loomed ahead. A grotesque mass of chitin and stolen metal. It pulsed with sickly green light, its maw still dripping with biomass from the last colony it had consumed. Target lock confirmed. Lieutenant Chen said, fingers dancing over her console. Railguns charged to full capacity. Blake didn't smile. He didn't need to. Fire. The Defiance shuddered as its main batteries unleashed hell. Tungsten rods, accelerated to 1/10 the speed of light, crossed the distance in a blink. The Vorak shields flared, then shattered like glass. The first round punched clean through the hive. Ship's central spire, detonating somewhere deep in its gut. The second split its carapace open like a rotten fruit. On the bridge of the Endless Hunger, the Vorak commander shrieked as his world came apart. His mandibles clattered, hissing static into the comms. What are these? These are not prey. These are... The transmission cut off as the third railgun round found its mark. The hive ship exploded in a silent bloom of fire and chitin. Across the fleet, similar scenes played out. The USN Atlantica carved through a swarm of Vorak drones, its point defense lasers slicing them apart like wheat. The USN Vengeance launched a full spread of torpedoes, each warhead programmed to seek out biomass signatures. They burrowed into Vorak ships and detonated, turning living hulls into expanding clouds of vapor. Blake watched the carnage with cold satisfaction. All ships advance, full burn toward the next hive ship cluster. A chorus of acknowledgements crackled over the comms. On the surface of a nearby moon, a Vorak harvest. Team froze as the sky above them lit up with fire. Their leader, a hulking drone, Master, tilted its head. Its crystalline exoskeleton reflected the dying light of its fleet. Then the ground shook. The humans had landed. Armored figures in black, and gold battleplate dropped from the sky, their boots cratering the earth. Their rifles hummed to life, barrels glowing blue. The drone, Master hissed, raising its scythe, like arms. More meat for the hive. Sergeant Marcus Klein didn't bother with a reply. He squeezed the trigger. The plasma round hit the drone. Master square in the chest, vaporizing its upper body in a flash of white heat. The remaining Vorak screeched, scrambling back, but there was nowhere to run. Klein's squad moved like shadows, cutting them down with surgical precision. One Vorak lunged, only to be bisected by a vibroblade. Another tried to flee, but a sniper round took its head off mid-step. In less than a minute, it was over. Klein kicked aside a smoking Vorak limb and opened a channel. "Moon secure, Captain. No survivors." Blake's voice crackled back. "Good, prep for orbital extraction. We've got more hunting to do." Aboard the Defiance, Lieutenant Chen exhaled slowly. "Sir, we just wiped out a Vorak battle group in 6 minutes. Their tech was supposed to be superior." Blake finally allowed himself a smirk. "That's the thing about predators, Lieutenant. They always forget. Therese always something bigger." The fleet burned toward the next target, their engines painting the void with fire. Somewhere in the dark, the Vorak hive, mind trembled. For the first time in its existence, it knew fear. The holographic war map flickered in the dim light of the Zephyrian observation spire. Scholar Kalis adjusted his feather crest, his talons trembling as they traced the crimson arcs of human fleet movements. The data stream showed impossible numbers, thousands of warships burning across the Orion Arm, each trajectory ending in Vorak annihilation. "They're not just defending," whispered his assistant, a young avian whose plumage had turned dull with stress. "They're hunting." Kalis zoomed in on the latest transmission from the frontier. The Vorak hive, world of Zenthar. Faye burned in real time, its atmosphere ripped away by kinetic bombardments. Human dreadnoughts hung in orbit like blackened teeth, their railgun batteries still glowing from the barrage. A chime sounded. The Federation Security Council was convening. Emergency session. Kalis spread his wings and launched toward the central chamber, where alien delegates already clustered around the primary display. The Kreth warlord Gorthak stood rigid, his amphibian skin mottled with panic. "Impossible," Gorthak croaked. "The Vorak harvest, fleet numbered millions." The hologram shifted. A human battleship, USN Titan, filled the display. Its hull bore no markings, no insignias. Just a single line of text near the prow, etched in an ancient human script. Kalis's translation implant stuttered before resolving the words, "Civis passum parabellum." A Zephyrian admiral hissed. Their records claimed they dismantled their war machines after the solar unification. Kalis watched as the Titan unleashed its primary weapon. A beam of cobalt energy lanced toward a Vorak world ship, slicing through its organic armor like a scalpel through flesh. The explosion that followed lit up the display with actinic fury. Then the feeds started coming in from other fronts. Human stealth ships materializing inside Vorak Nebula, nests detonating singularity mines, automated kill. Sats awakening in dead systems, their targeting arrays locking onto Vorak biosignatures. And worse, far worse, the ancient things stirring in the dark corners of human space. Kalis accessed the oldest archives his security clearance allowed. The files were fragmentary, half-deleted. He pieced together the truth as the chamber erupted around him. "You fools," he whispered, but no one heard. The humans hadn't just hidden their fleet, they'd hidden their history. The hologram flickered again. Now it showed a massive construct drifting near Pluto, a ring-shaped station covered in weapon ports. Kalis' implant identified it before his conscious mind could reject the possibility. Arkham, class planetary siege engine, status, active. Gorthak grabbed Kalis's wing. "What is that? Some new human toy?" Kalis' beak clicked shut. He remembered the human ambassador's words from decades ago, when the Federation first welcomed them as a young, peaceful species. "We've outgrown war," the human had said with that strange, flat smile. Now Kalis understood. It wasn't a smile. It was a warning. The chamber's main screen split. A human admiral appeared, haze, her uniform crisp, her eyes colder than the void between galaxies. Behind her, the shattered remains of a Vorak hive, Queen's skull floated in a containment field. "Attention, Galactic Federation," Hayes said. Her voice carried the weight of centuries. The Vorak made one fatal mistake. She leaned closer until her face filled every screen in the chamber. "They harvested food, but we harvest vengeance." The transmission cut in the silence that followed. Kaylee's accessed the deepest archives, the ones marked Human, Orion Wars classified. The files opened. The first image showed a planet cracked like an egg, its continents drifting apart in the glow of a dying star. The caption read, "Sol System Defense Grid, Test Phase Results, Optimal." Gorthak was screaming now, demanding immediate surrender protocols. Kalis didn't listen. He was too busy watching the live feed from the edge of human space, where something vast and angular was waking up in the Kuiper belt. His implant identified it with clinical precision. Yeldaboth, Class World Engine, Primary Directive, Systemic Purification. The humans hadn't just awakened their fleet, they'd awakened their gods, and the galaxy would soon learn the difference. The chamber of the Galactic Senate had never known such silence. The air itself seemed to hold its breath as Admiral Lisa Hayes strode across the polished floor, her boots echoing like gunshots in the cavernous space. Behind her, 2 armored Marines dragged the massive chitinous skull of the Vorak hive, Queen, its crystalline exoskeleton still glistening with bioluminescent fluids. The sound of it scraping against marble made several delegates flinch. Hayes stopped at the center of the chamber. She didn't bother with the speaker's podium. She didn't need it. The holographic display behind her flickered to life, showing the Sol Defense Fleet, thousands of warships, their railguns humming with barely restrained power, orbiting every core world of the Federation. The Zephyrian High Speaker, his feathered crest flattened in fear, was the first to break the silence. This is madness, you cannot." Hayes didn't let him finish. She raised a hand and the Marines dropped the hive, Queen's skull. It hit the floor with a crack that reverberated through the chamber. The sound was final, absolute. "You called us weak," Hayes said, her voice calm, measured, the kind of calm that came before a storm. "You laughed when the Vorak harvested our colonies. You called us expendable." A Kreth warlord, the same one who had sneered at Ambassador Reeves weeks ago, shifted in his seat. His amphibian skin had lost its usual vibrant hue, now a sickly grey. "We did not know. You didn't care to know," Hayes snapped. The hologram shifted, showing the ruins of Vorak Hive. Worlds, their surfaces scorched bare by human plasma bombardments. 200 years ago, we laid down our weapons. Not because we were defeated, not because we were afraid, because we had won. Every war, every enemy, we chose peace. She took a step forward, and the entire Senate seemed to recoil as one. But peace was never our nature. It was our mercy. The Zephyrian scholar Kalis, his telepathic mind trembling with the weight of realization, whispered, "You were never the prey. You were the hunters all along." Hayes didn't smile. There was no triumph in her eyes, only cold, hard certainty. The Vorak thought they could farm us, harvest us. They learned the truth when our railguns tore their hive, ships apart, when our soldiers boarded their worlds and burned them to ash. She gestured to the skull at her feet. "Their queen died begging. I thought you should see what that looks like." The Kreth warlord stood abruptly, his webbed hands shaking. "You would dare threaten us? The Federation has fleets of its own." Hayes didn't even glance at him. "Your fleets are already disarmed. Your shipyards are under our control. Your homeworlds, one transmission away from sharing the Vorak's fate." The chamber erupted into panicked shouts, delegates rising from their seats, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of fear. Hayes let it continue for exactly 3 seconds before raising her hand again. Silence fell like a blade. "The harvest is over," she said, her voice cutting through the stillness. "Now we reap." Behind her, the hologram shifted once more. The Sol Defense Fleet moved in perfect unison, their weapons systems locking onto targets across the galaxy, not firing. Not yet. But the message was clear. The age of human mercy had ended. The age of human dominion had begun. The Vorak hive, world of Zenthrax Prime burned. Admiral Lisa Hayes watched from the bridge of the USN Vanguard as orbital bombardment cannons lit up the planet's night side like a second sun. The Vorak had built their empire on the bones of harvested species. Today, humanity returned the favor. Admiral, Captain Blake's voice crackled over the comm from the Defiance. Their last defensive fleet is in retreat orders. Hayes didn't hesitate. Burn them. Across the system, human warships surged forward. Railgun rounds tore through Vorak hulls at relativistic speeds. Plasma warheads detonated in silent blossoms of fire. The Vorak had never faced an enemy that hit this hard, this fast. On the surface, Governor Elias Carter, once a prisoner in the Vorak biomass pits, stood amid the ruins of a harvesting complex. His hands shook as he gripped a scavenged plasma rifle. Around him, the few surviving colonists stared at the sky, where human ships rained fire upon their tormentors. One of them, a young engineer named Rhea, whispered, "They came back for us." Carter's voice was raw. "They always come back." In the Galactic Senate, chaos reigned. Ambassador Daniel Reeves stood at the center of the chamber, the holographic feed of Zenthrax destruction playing behind him. The Zepyrians' feathers were flattened in fear. The Kreth warlords had stopped laughing. "You let this happen," Reeves said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "You watched as the Vorak harvested us, called us weak, expendable." A Zepyrian scholar, Kalis, raised a trembling wing. "We didn't know, you didn't care," Reeves snapped. 200 years of peace, and you forgot what humans are." The hologram shifted, showing not just Zenthrax, but the thousands of human ships now mobilizing across the galaxy. The mothballed fleets, the dormant war machines, all awake, all hungry. A Kreth warlord bared his teeth. "You wouldn't dare attack the Federation." Reeves smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Try us." On the bridge of the Vanguard, Hayes received a new transmission, not from the Senate, not from the Vorak, from Earth. The screen flickered to life, revealing the lined face of Director Vance of the Sol Defense Council. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned. "Lisa, it's done. The old codes have been accepted." Hayes went very still. "All of them, all of them." Behind her, the tactical officer gasped. "Admiral, we're getting signals from the Kuiper Belt. The Titans are waking up." Hayes closed her eyes. The Titans, planet killers from the last war, buried in ice and silence for centuries. The final red button, she opened her eyes. "Tell the Senate they have 1 hour to surrender." Captain Blake's voice was tight over the comm. "Admiral, are we really doing this?" Hayes watched the star map, where human fleets now outnumbered every other species' combined forces. "They made one mistake, Ryan." "What's that?" "They forgot," Hayes said softly. "That predators hate being caged." The first Titan's engines flared to life. The galaxy held its breath. The Vorak homeworld burned. Admiral Lisa Hayes watched from the bridge of the USN Vanguard as orbital bombardment cannons turned continents to glass. The once proud hive, cities of the biomass harvesters, collapsed into molten craters, their crystalline spires shattering like brittle bones. "Admiral," Captain Blake's voice crackled over the comm from the Defiance. "We're detecting massive energy spikes from their core hive. They're trying something." Hayes didn't flinch. Let them. Deep beneath the planet's surface, the last Vorak queen shrieked as her bio-engineered war forms scrambled to activate their final weapon, a planet cracker, designed to deny their world to the enemy. The massive organic machine pulsed with stolen human DNA spliced into its core. It never fired. A single tungsten rod launched from lunar orbit 6 hours earlier struck the hive at Feifei C. The impact vaporized the queen, her warriors, and 300 square kilometers of bedrock. The shock wave rippled across the planet, toppling the last standing structures. On the bridge of the Vanguard, a Zepyrian envoy trembled as the holographic display updated. Kalis, the scholar who had once mocked human fragility, now clutched his feathered crest in horror. You knew they'd try to destroy their own world." Hayes turned, her eyes cold. We wrote the manual on scorched earth, Ambassador. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Federation watched. The Kreth warlords, who had laughed as human colonies burned, now stood silent on their bridge. Their amphibian skin paled as sensor feeds showed human fleets moving, not just toward Vorak space, but everywhere. On Mars, the last of the sleeping war machines awoke, the Titan-class dreadnoughts, buried in the red sands for 2 centuries, shook off their rust. Their reactors hummed to life, each one capable of glassing a planet in a single salvo. Captain Blake's voice cut through the silence on the Vanguard. "Admiral, we're receiving a Federation wide broadcast. They're begging for a ceasefire." Hayes smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Open a channel. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the assembled leaders of the Galactic Federation. The Zeperian's feathers were flat with fear. The Kreth warlord, who had called humans expendable, now clutched the edges of his podium, his webbed fingers trembling. "You misunderstand," Hayes said, her voice calm. "This isn't a war, it is a demonstration." Behind her, the star map updated. Every core world, every Federation capital, every system of importance, flashing red under the crosshairs of human fleets. The Kreth warlord croaked. "What do you want?" Hayes leaned forward. 200 years ago, we laid down our weapons because we thought the galaxy had learned. Today, we picked them back up to teach the lesson again. On the surface of the Vorak homeworld, the last embers of their civilization flickered out. The transmission ended with a single, unspoken truth hanging in the air. Humanity wasn't just winning, they'd already won. The chamber of the Galactic Senate had never known such silence. The air itself seemed to hold its breath as Admiral Lisa Hayes' boots echoed across the polished floor. The alien delegates shrank back in their seats, their many eyes wide, their appendages trembling. None dared meet her gaze. She stopped at the center of the chamber, the weight of 1,000 warships at her back. Slowly, deliberately, she reached into the satchel at her hip. The sound of something heavy and hollow clattering onto the marble floor made the Kreth warlord flinch. The Vorak hive, Queen's skull, rolled to a stop at the feet of the Zeperian delegation. Its crystalline exoskeleton, once unbreakable, was now cracked and scorched. The empty eye sockets stared up at them, a silent testament to humanity's Ratha harvest, Hayes said. Her voice cold, is over. Behind her, the hologram flickered to life. A star map of the known galaxy unfolded. But this time, it wasn't human colonies burning. It was Vorak hive, worlds their surfaces glassed, their fleets reduced to drifting wreckage, and surrounding every core world of the Federation, human warships. Not the mothballed relics they had dismissed, but sleek, monstrous things, their railguns humming with barely restrained power. The Kreth warlord, the same one who had sneered at humanity's expendability, tried to speak. His gills flared, but no sound came out. Hayes didn't wait for him to find his voice. "You called us weak," she continued, stepping forward. The delegates recoiled as if she carried the weight of dead worlds in her shadow. "You let the Vorak butcher our people. You laughed as they burned our homes." Her hand rested on the sidearm at her hip, not a threat, but a reminder. "But you forgot one thing." The Zeperian scholar, Kalis, dared to look up. His feathers were dull with fear. "What did we forget?" he whispered. Hayes smiled. It wasn't a kind expression. "You forgot that peace was never our nature." She turned to the hologram, where the last of the Vorak strongholds crumbled under human artillery. "It was our mercy." A shudder ran through the chamber. The Kreth warlord finally found his voice. "What do you want?" he rasped. Hayes didn't blink. Terms the word hung in the air, heavy as a planet. Killer's payload. The Zeperians exchanged glances. The Kreth shifted uneasily. Even the telepathic Cerelians, who had once mocked human fragility, now huddled together, their floating orbs darting nervously. "You will disband the Federation's military councils," Hayes said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "You will cede control of all border systems to human oversight, and you will never," her gaze swept the room, "ever underestimate us again." silence. Then one by one the delegates bowed their heads. Kalis was the last. His wings trembled as he dipped his beak in submission. And if we refuse, Hayes didn't answer. She didn't need to. The hologram behind her flickered again, zooming in on lunar shipyards. Automated factories churned out new warships at a pace that defied reason. Dreadnoughts, carriers, planet breakers, all gleaming under the light of Earth's. Son, the message was clear. The Kreth warlord swallowed hard. We accept. Hayes turned on her heel and walked toward the exit. The doors hissed open before her, revealing the starfield beyond. The delegates didn't move. They didn't dare. As she stepped into the corridor, the last thing they heard was her voice, calm and final. Now we reap.